Hi folks, and welcome to another Parent Council Priorities. In this one, we're going to cover planning safe events and risk assessments. We're aware that many parent councils across the city often put on events for our children and young people, and particularly given the demographic that you are dealing with, you need to make sure that your events are planned in a safe way and that you're covering everything that you as a parent council have a responsibility to cover. So that's what this video hopefully will help you with today. So in the lead up to your parent council event, if you're required to book a school let, just make sure that you book that in plenty of time. We have covered the school lets in another parent council priorities video, which I've linked through to on these slides. So make sure you watch that video, because it's not just a case of putting in your booking for your school let. There are some terms and conditions that come along with that let. So make sure that you're well aware of those conditions and the booking procedure and the timescales, because again, there's so many school lets that are booked and community lets that there is a timescale you have to have your let booked for. And just remember as well that it's down to your responsibility as the parent council to book that let. It shouldn't be the school that's booking it, because it will be your event. And when you are booking that let, then you as the let holder are responsible for the health and safety and welfare of everyone attending. So it is your responsibility as a parent council. Also check your public liability insurance terms and conditions. Many of these events you may be taking cash in, whether it's at a tuck shop or on the door or for whatever reason. Just check the insurance conditions and check the amount that you're allowed to be storing in your home overnight. Check if there's any conditions in terms of how it should be stored, etc. It's down to you as a parent council to make sure you know these things when you are booking your events, so that you're complying with the terms and conditions, because these are all kind of legalities and it could come back to bite you if not followed correctly. Also, when anyone is booking the let, that person is the go-to person, the point of contact, and it's that individual that accepts full responsibility for any accident, injury or damage. So that's the kind of severity around this. Now, we're not trying to put you off booking events. Obviously, we still want you to continue to do that, but we just want you to make sure that you're covering all the administration in the lead up to the event and all of the health and safety as well. And part of that is to make sure that you have up-to-date policies in place. We know that things slip, and keeping on top of admin at times in a parent council can be quite difficult. You've got your own care and responsibilities, you might be working, etc. But when you are part of the parent council, like I've said, that there are responsibilities that come along with that. And part of that is making sure that you have up-to-date policies. If you are holding events predominantly for children and young people, you need to make sure that you have a child protection policy in place. And if you are collecting names, emails, phone numbers for any sort of events, you should be making sure that you've got a data protection policy in place as well. So again, we've got another video, it's a parent council training video on our YouTube channel that goes through constitution training and all the different policies that you should have in place. So make sure you watch that. And then there's a link on these slides to example policies. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you so that it's just a copy and paste and tweaking job with your policies. So all the kind of green links that you see on these slides, you can link through to further information, and the links to the slides are always included in the YouTube description below. So the let holder is also responsible for the conduct of everyone attending. And also the let holder will need to go through an induction by the janitor that includes fire safety, and you'll have to sign it to confirm. So make sure all of these steps are followed. And accidents must be reported to the janitor, who will help with an incident form. Because it's really difficult to go backwards and claw this back if anything ever happens. But if you've done all of the prep in the lead up to your event, then hopefully it's pretty much smooth sailing, and fingers crossed you'll never need to use or report any of this stuff. Another big thing that you need to remember when you're planning your events is make sure that you have enough volunteers. It's something that myself and Catherine constantly hear from parent councils in the lead up to their events is that they're running out of volunteers, they don't have enough booked in, and then they rely on school staff to attend these events, and that's not always possible. So make sure if it's your event running by the parent council that you have enough volunteers booked to cover your event. And if these are regular volunteers that are always part of your events, these volunteers then should have be processed through the PVG application or update. Now, if that individual works in an area where they're already part of the PVG membership, like if it's social work or they're a teacher or they're a youth worker, it's not enough to just take their PVG that they have for their job or another voluntary role. You as this parent council need to ensure that you are getting updates for that individual from Disclosure Scotland for their role with you. Because if you don't do that, there are serious implications to that as the legislation changes next year, and its legal implications. So again, we've linked through to the PVG information and how you apply for PVG applications or updates for your own volunteers. And we will be holding, no doubt, another parent council PVG training at some point. So make sure you're up to date with all of this information. You must complete a comprehensive risk assessment as well. So the best advice we can give you is to keep it simple and make sure all your volunteers on the night read it. So it's not just for you as the let holder or the event organiser, everyone needs to know it. And you need that because the insurance requires it. You'll also need it to help plan your event safely. And it protects the parent council that are working and the parent council volunteers that are working at the event as well as the people attending. So it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but you just need to make sure that it includes everything that's required. So those kind of things are identifying any hazards, who could be harmed and how, practical steps to reduce any risks, how you'll deal with each hazard, any emergency procedures, and you should also keep a copy for the parent council. Might even be recommended to give a copy to the school to keep on file. And for each event, you need to review and update that. So it's not good enough to just say, well, we've done it once, that will cover us every year for the same Halloween disco or something. Make sure you review it every time and edit it every time and then date it so that people know that it has been reviewed. So I'm going to pass you over to Catherine, who will talk about just before, during the event and after the event.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. Yeah, there's lots of helpful links for you. And there's also a really helpful section, frequently asked questions about insurance on the Connect website. So your insurance, it's membership linked insurance with Connect. And once you log into that site, you can find all of that. So for event planning, it is also worth having a look at the insurance frequently asked questions because it's written in very simple language and there to help you, as along with all of those templates that Leanne has talked about, and you know how to do a simple risk assessment. We give you all, but I think what we hear about and what we see in practice is a lot of very haphazard planning by parent councils. And there's maybe a focus on a lot of the wrong things. So, for example, I see parent councils who are desperately running around wanting to make sure they've got enough sweeties, but they haven't always thought about, have they got enough commitment from their helpers? So it's this bit about planning beforehand. You know, there isn't a fixed ratio, but you need to think about who you have got there to help you. Because we had an example last year of a parent council who found their event to be so stressful that they were quite distressed after it because their helpers didn't turn up. So they had very few parent council helpers and lots of children running around out of control. And no volunteer wants to find themselves doing that of an evening. So you're giving up your time to do this, but it is worth actually doing that little bit of planning. You know, so first of all, making sure, have you got enough people there? Do you know how many children are going to come? What's the age of the children? If it's a disco, do you need to introduce a little bit more structure to the event so that you don't have kids running round a room where they're likely to trip up or bang into each other? Children have had to go to hospital after they have collided, heads have collided with teeth. All of these things you might think, oh, it won't, hopefully it won't happen to you, but they have happened to other people. And I always say, you know, plan for the worst, and then you know, you hopefully make that event safer by thinking about that in that risk assessment, what could go wrong and how much can you do to stop that happening. So planning for all eventualities is really, really important. So that first bit about, you know, how many children are coming, you know, knowing how many children are actually in your building. And we got some complaints when we were saying that letting wanted, you know, no tickets to be sold on the door. What that was about was really around fire safety. You need to know that you know, firstly, that the room is big enough for your event, but how many children are actually there? The fire service has turned up at events in the past where an alarm has gone off and it's not something malicious. So there's maybe something has happened and the fire alarm has gone off. And the first thing that the fire brigade ask is how many people are in the building. And there was a parent council who were unable to tell the fire service how many children were in the building. So you need to think about your system for who's coming, and maybe having a volunteer or having people who are actually on the door to know who has gone home, and to actually, you know, adjust the figures for who's in the building, because the fire service will they will be really upset and angry if you can't tell them who's there, if they have to go searching through a building. If there was a real fire, that would become an issue. Thankfully, in the past, these have been, you know, they've not been a real fire, but there's a piece of learning there for everybody about having a system when children are leaving, and you also need to know who they're being collected by. So having all those plans in place, also thinking about who's going to pick children up, what you're going to do if somebody doesn't come to collect a child at the end. Have you gathered in contact numbers for the children, or are the children all just there and you're hoping that they're going to be picked up? So you need to plan what you would do if an adult didn't come to get a child at the end of the night. Accidents and allergies. I've said quite a bit about accidents. Allergies, if you're going to give the children at the event something to eat, you need to, you know, maybe have asked if you're providing food, are there allergies that we need to know about? I would also say that I have seen a lot of evidence of parent councils giving children things that are full of sugar, full of E numbers and colour. And I think any parent could tell you what the impact of those are on behaviour. So maybe not the best things to give out at events. Also, if you're going to be face painting, as people do at these events, are your face painters using good products? Do you know that all children can have, you know, face paint applied? Because there are children who have allergies to those sorts of products. So thinking ahead and just asking, you know, knowing who's coming, and are there any issues that you need to be aware of for those who are coming to your event? So thinking about health and safety, because as Leanne alluded to, the person who signs the LEP form assumes responsibility for health and safety and would be working closely with the janitor who's on site to do that. But if possible, having a trained first aider, and I know that not every parent council will have one, but if you can maybe look for a parent volunteer who has got a first aid certificate for, you know, for work or for something else that they do, that would be really helpful to have a first aider on site. But then with any accident, as has already been stated, if an accident does happen, then there's a form that needs to be filled in, but the janitor can help with that. So that's all covered in the conditions of let. So at the end of the event, hopefully it's all gone well. It's your responsibility to leave the place as you found it. The janitor will help, the janitor will advise, but it will be your responsibility to do the cleanup. Any damage that you notice to property would need to be reported, and the let holder would assume responsibility for that. That's where your public liability insurance comes into its own. So if something happens, then you are insured. And that's why we provide you with the insurance, because we realise it's parents volunteering and nobody wants to be personally liable, and we don't want you to be personally liable for that too. This is always a biggie if you're collecting money at the event. Two people should do that counting. You need to look at your insurance policy, because you are only covered for specified amounts held in people's homes. So if you can't have access to the school safe, it may be that it's a parent council only event and there are no school staff there. So you can't put anything into the safe in the school. You need to look at who's taking it away. People need to be aware how much certain individuals have taken, and are you covered in the insurance for the amounts that have been taken to somebody's home. And I should have said at the beginning, a lot of the confusion about these events is also arising from nobody being clear whose event it is. And schools are sometimes saying, oh, we could book the let, but we find that there's not going to be a lot of school staff there. So it is important to say, is this a parent council event with school staff helping, or is it a school event with the parent council helping? Because the organiser of the event assumes all responsibility for it. So really important to lay that out at the beginning.